Dr. Sylvan Kaur reviewed the presentation one more time, his three-fingered hands trembling with excitement. After 32 years of research, after analyzing thousands of hours of human combat footage, after building the most detailed psychological profiles in the entire Varos Collective's history, humans were finally coming here. Real humans, to his facility. The Varos Institute of Warfare Studies orbited the gas giant Andara 7, a perfect location far from populated worlds. When studying the galaxy's most dangerous species, distance seemed wise. The Institute's curved white walls held the most extensive collection of human warfare data outside Earth itself. Every battle, every conflict, every tactical decision had been recorded, analyzed, and studied by teams of researchers who dedicated their lives to understanding humanity. Dr. Sylvan had been one of those researchers since the beginning. He still remembered the day the Varos Collective made first contact with humans. The images had spread across every news channel. Tall bipedal creatures with forward-facing eyes, powerful frames, and an unsettling habit of showing their teeth when pleased. The Collective's military analysts had immediately classified them as Category 4 apex predators. Only one species in known space ranked higher, and that species had destroyed itself in nuclear war before achieving space travel. But humans had survived. More than survived. They thrived. Research Assistant Olin rushed into the observation deck, his blue skin flushed darker with excitement. "They've docked!" The human transport just connected to Bay 7. They'll be coming through processing in about 20 minutes. Dr. Sylvan felt his heart's beating faster. Both of them. Is everything ready? The presentation files? The safety protocols? All set, Olin confirmed. Though Commander Lissa still thinks we're being overly cautious with the security measures. Commander Lissa, Dr. Sylvan said carefully, has not spent 3 decades studying what humans are capable of. We have. Better cautious than sorry. The security measures had been argued about for weeks. Force fields in every corridor. Armed guards stationed at intervals. Panic buttons hidden throughout the facility. Commander Lisa Venn, the Institute's military liaison, thought it was ridiculous. She believed the research was interesting but impractical. Humans are our allies now, she had said during the last meeting. We don't need to treat them like prisoners. But Dr. Sylvan remembered the footage. He remembered watching a single human soldier fight through an enemy position that should have killed him 3 times over. He remembered the tactical assessments that showed how humans could function for days without sleep, could push through injuries that would incapacitate most species, could make split-second decisions under pressure that their battle computers couldn't match. The research team had concluded that humans possessed something they called combat. Persistence, a psychological trait that prevented them from recognizing when they should logically give up. It made them terrifying. The alert chimed. Human guests have cleared medical processing and are entering the main facility. The facility computer announced in its flat tone. Dr. Sylvan smoothed down his gray research coat and headed for the reception area. Olin followed close behind, carrying a data tablet loaded with welcome materials. They had prepared for this moment so carefully. The humans would tour the facility, see the respect and dedication the Varos had put into understanding their species, and hopefully appreciate the scientific rigor involved. The reception area doors slid open. Dr. Sylvan stopped walking. 4 humans stood there. 2 adults as expected, but they had brought their offspring. The research files had mentioned human family units, but somehow Dr. Sylvan hadn't quite processed that real human children would be here. In his facility, the smaller one, barely reaching the adult female's waist, clutched a soft object that looked like a toy animal. The older offspring, perhaps adolescent stage, looked around the facility with bright, curious eyes. "Hello," the adult male said, his voice surprisingly gentle for a predator species. "I'm David. This is my wife Rachel, our son Noah, and our daughter Lily. Thank you so much for inviting us." Dr. Sylvan's brain caught up with his body. "Welcome, welcome. I am Dr. Sylvan Kaur, head of the Human Combat Research Division. This is my assistant, Olin. We are honored to host you." The female human, Rachel, smiled, that tooth-showing expression that the research said indicated pleasure, not aggression. "We're excited to be here. Noah especially has been asking questions about your species for weeks." The older offspring, Noah, practically bounced. "Is it true you have 3 hearts? Can you really see in ultraviolet? Do you actually communicate partly through skin color changes? Before Dr. Sylvan could answer, Commander Lissa entered from the side corridor. Her skin had shifted to a professional pale blue. I see our guests have arrived. Welcome to the Institute. I hope you'll forgive our researchers. They've been preparing for this visit like it's a military operation. David laughed, a sound the research files described as indicating amusement. We appreciate the thoroughness. We know our species has a bit of a reputation. Indeed, Dr. Sylvan said. Perhaps you would like to begin with a tour? We have prepared a presentation showing the scope of our research. I think you'll find it quite comprehensive. The humans agreed, and the group began moving through the facility. Dr. Sylvan noticed everything, the way David's eyes scanned each new room, cataloging exits and potential threats. The research had called this threat assessment behavior. The way Rachel positioned herself slightly between her offspring and the unfamiliar aliens. Protective maternal instinct, the file said. The younger offspring, Lily, stayed quiet, watching everything with wide eyes while holding her comfort object. Every behavior matched the predictions. Decades of research were being validated in real time. Dr. Sylvan felt pride warming through him. They had gotten it right. They understood humans. Finally, after all these years of study and analysis and careful observation, they truly understood humanity. He had no idea how wrong he was. The presentation hall had been prepared with meticulous care. Dr. Sylvan had insisted on comfortable seating for the human guests, even though the chairs looked absurdly large compared to the standard Veros furniture. The holographic display system hummed softly, ready to project the thousands of research hours into digestible visual format. This moment represented the culmination of his life's work, and Dr. Sylvan wanted everything perfect. Rachel settled into one of the oversized chairs with Lily on her lap. Noah sat beside David, swinging his legs because they didn't quite reach the floor. Commander Lissa stood near the back wall, her skin tone suggesting polite skepticism. Olin checked the display systems one final time before nodding to Dr. Sylvan. For over 3 decades, Dr. Sylvan began, the Veros Collective has sought to understand humanity. Not because we feared you, though I'll admit initial contact caused considerable concern. We sought understanding because your species represents something unique in the galactic community. You are warriors, yes, but you are also explorers, artists, diplomats, and scientists. You contain contradictions that fascinate us. The holographic display lit up, showing footage from humanity's various military conflicts. David shifted in his seat but said nothing. Rachel's hand moved unconsciously to cover Lily's eyes during a particularly intense clip, though the child wasn't paying much attention anyway. She seemed more interested in examining the strange texture of her mother's chair. We analyzed your tactical approaches, Dr. Sylvan continued, pulling up diagrams and charts. Human military doctrine emphasizes adaptability over rigid structure. Where other species, including my own, prefer clear hierarchies and predetermined strategies, humans excel at improvisation. You call it thinking outside the box, if our translation is correct. David nodded. That's a fair assessment. We do tend to get creative when plans fall apart, which they frequently do in combat, Dr. Petrin added from his seat near the front. The combat psychology specialist had been dying to meet real humans. Our research shows humans actually perform better under pressure. Your stress responses, rather than degrading function, seem to enhance certain capabilities. Increased strength, faster reaction times, heightened awareness. It's extraordinary. Noah raised his hand like he was in school. Is that the adrenaline response? We learned about that in science class. Precisely, Dr. Petran said, clearly delighted. Your endocrine system floods your body with chemicals that would incapacitate most species. But humans evolved to use this response, to thrive in it, Rachel smiled. Though I should mention that most humans aren't in combat situations regularly. The everyday life of an average person on Earth is pretty peaceful. Dr. Sylvan adjusted the display to show different footage. We understand. Our research also examined human social structures, family units, and civilian behavior patterns. The protective instincts, for instance, appear universal across your species, regardless of military training. The screen showed various clips of humans protecting each other, rescuing strangers, risking themselves for others. Commander Lissa finally spoke up. This is the part I find most interesting. Your pack bonding extends beyond genetic relationships. Humans will protect complete strangers, even members of other species. It's illogical from a pure survival standpoint, yet it happens constantly. We call it empathy, David said quietly. It's not always logical, but it's part of who we are. The presentation continued for another hour. Dr. Sylvan showed them the physiological research, the detailed breakdowns of human muscle structure and bone density, the analysis of your binocular vision and how it contributed to your predatory nature. He explained the research into human pain tolerance, endurance capabilities, and the terrifying ability to continue fighting even with severe injuries. Noah found all of it fascinating. He asked questions about everything, his young mind soaking up information like a sponge. Lily, however, was getting bored. She squirmed in Rachel's lap, occasionally making small noises that Rachel quickly soothed. Dr. Sylvan noticed this behavior and made a mental note. Even in a formal setting, the human offspring required constant attention from the parent. Fascinating. The most remarkable finding, Dr. Sylvan said, reaching the conclusion of his presentation, is that humans don't seem to recognize your own uniqueness. When we first made contact, we expected a warrior culture, a society built around conflict and domination. Instead, we found artists, teachers, engineers, parents. You are capable of incredible violence, yet you choose cooperation. You could dominate through force, yet you prefer diplomacy. This contradiction defines humanity. David and Rachel exchanged a look. Rachel spoke first. We appreciate the depth of research you've done. It's clear you've put enormous effort into understanding us, but I think there might be a selection bias in your data. Dr. Sylvan's skin flushed with confusion. Selection bias? Most of your footage is from military conflicts, right? Combat situations, battles, wars. That's like studying Vero society by only watching your most stressful moments. You'd get an incomplete picture. We have civilian footage as well, Olin protested, pulling up files on his tablet. Market interactions, social gatherings, recreational activities. But do you have footage of the boring parts? David asked with a gentle smile. Grocery shopping? Sitting in traffic? Doing laundry? Helping kids with homework? The actual day-to-day life that makes up most of human existence? Dr. Sylvan considered this. Their research had focused on notable moments, significant events, interactions that revealed something about human nature. Had they missed something by ignoring the mundane? Commander Lissa laughed, a sound like wind chimes. I told you the research was too narrow, Sylvan. You can't understand a species by only studying their warriors. But all humans are potential warriors, Dr. Petrin argued. The capacity exists in all of you. Our research proves it. The capacity, maybe, Rachel said, adjusting Lily, who was now trying to climb down from her lap. But capacity isn't the same as constant state. Noah has the capacity to run everywhere he goes, but that doesn't mean he's always sprinting. I could sprint if I wanted to, Noah said defensively. I'm really fast. I know you are, honey, Rachel said with clear affection. But you don't run everywhere because it would be exhausting and unnecessary. Dr. Sylvan felt something shifting in his understanding, like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit the expected picture. Before he could explore this feeling further, Lily finally succeeded in climbing down from Rachel's lap. She stood in the middle of the presentation hall, looking small and oddly vulnerable in the large space designed for Vero's proportions. She clutched her stuffed toy and looked directly at Dr. Sylvan with those unsettling, forward-facing predator eyes. Then she said something in a small voice that the translator picked up clearly. I'm hungry. Such a simple statement, such an ordinary need. Yet Dr. Sylvan found himself analyzing it through his research framework. The offspring was alerting the pack to a resource requirement, standard survival behavior. The parent would now need to address this need to maintain pack cohesion and offspring health. He had no idea that this simple statement of hunger would be the beginning of the end of everything he thought he understood about humanity. The Institute's cafeteria occupied an entire deck, with viewing windows that showed the swirling clouds of Andara 7 below. Dr. Sylvan had suggested a meal break, partly because the small human offspring had indicated hunger, and partly because he wanted to observe human feeding behaviors in a social setting. The research files contained detailed nutritional information, but watching the actual process would provide valuable context. Rachel carried Lily while David and Noah walked ahead, examining the various food stations with obvious curiosity. The cafeteria had been stocked with human-compatible foods based on the dietary requirements provided in advance. Varos food synthesizers could create almost anything with the right molecular template. This is amazing, Noah said, staring at the selection. You can make any food just by programming it? Within reason, Olan explained, clearly enjoying the boy's enthusiasm. The synthesizers need the base molecular structure in the database. We downloaded several thousand human food items in preparation for your visit. David selected something that resembled a sandwich, while Noah opted for what the database called pizza. Dr. Sylvan watched closely, noting how the male adult tested the food temperature before allowing the offspring to eat. Protective behavior. Risk assessment. Exactly as the research predicted. Rachel set Lily down in one of the adjusted chairs and began looking through the food options on the display screen. Do you have crackers? The kind that come in the red box? Olin checked his tablet. We have 17 varieties of human crackers in the database. Could you be more specific? The cheese ones. She's very particular about which ones she likes. Olin scrolled through options showing Rachel various images. She shook her head at each one. No, not those. Not those either. They're a specific brand. I should have brought some with us. Dr. Sylvan noticed the small human offspring, Lily, was watching this exchange with increasing focus. Her grip on the stuffed toy tightened. Something in her expression changed, though he couldn't quite interpret it through his research framework. I'm sorry, Olin said after going through all the options. We don't seem to have that exact variety. Would one of these alternatives be acceptable? Rachel glanced at Lily, and Dr. Sylvan saw something in the adult female's face. Recognition, concern. Lily, honey, they don't have your special crackers here. But look, they have these nice ones that look very similar. Shall we try those? The small human's face began to change color. Slight reddening of the skin, particularly around the eyes. The translator had mentioned that human emotional states often manifested in visible, physiological changes. But Dr. Sylvan had assumed this applied mainly to aggression responses. No, Lily said, her voice different now, higher pitched, stressed. Want my crackers? I know, sweetheart, but we're on the space station now. We'll have your crackers when we get back to the ship. For now, let's try something else. No. Louder this time. Other Varos researchers in the cafeteria turned to look. Want my crackers? Want them now. Dr. Sylvan's skin shifted to confused orange. This wasn't in the research files. The offspring was entering a state of distress, but there was no threat present. No danger. Nothing that would trigger a survival response. Rachel was offering perfectly adequate nutrition alternatives. David stood up from his seat, recognizing something that Dr. Sylvan didn't. Rachel, how long since her nap? Too long, Rachel said quietly, an edge of tiredness in her own voice. And we got delayed in the presentation. I should have seen this coming. Seen what coming? Dr. Petrin asked, moving closer with his recording tablet active. Is the offspring experiencing a medical issue? Not medical, Rachel said, reaching for Lily. She's just tired and hungry and overwhelmed. Lily, sweetie, let's take some deep breaths together. But Lily was already past the point of rational discussion. The small human pulled away from her mother's reaching hands. Her face had progressed from pink to red. Her eyes began producing water, tears streaming down her face, and then she began to scream. It wasn't a scream of pain or fear. Dr. Sylvan had heard those in his research footage. This was something else entirely. This was pure, unfiltered emotional overload expressed at maximum volume. Lily dropped to the floor, her stuffed toy falling beside her, and began what David would later call a Category 5 meltdown. The small human thrashed on the cafeteria floor, screaming words that were mostly incomprehensible through the sobs and the screaming. Her legs kicked out. Her arms flailed. She was completely, utterly beyond reason or negotiation. Every researcher in the cafeteria stopped what they were doing. Dr. Sylvan felt his hearts racing, both of them hammering against his chest. This made no sense. No tactical sense whatsoever. The offspring had rendered herself completely vulnerable. She was on the ground, eyes closed, situational awareness at zero. Any predator could attack. Any threat could approach. Yet she continued screaming, continued thrashing, completely heedless of the danger she was putting herself in. Someone call medical, a researcher shouted from across the room. No, wait, Rachel said, raising her voice to be heard over Lily's screaming. But the damage was done. Security Chief Davin burst through the cafeteria doors, his skin flashing warning red. Two security personnel behind him. "What's happening?" Davin demanded, his hand on his stun weapon. "We detected a distress signal." "There's no distress," David said, positioning himself between his daughter and the security team. Noah had moved behind his father, following some instinct that put the adult between him and potential threat. "She's just having a tantrum." "A tantrum?" Dr. Sylvan repeated. The word existed in the human language database, but he'd never paid it much attention. It was listed under child-rearing terminology, which wasn't relevant to combat research. "Yes, a tantrum," Rachel said, kneeling beside her screaming daughter but not trying to pick her up. "She's 3 years old, she's tired. She wanted specific food we don't have, and she's expressing her feelings about it in the only way she currently knows how." Lily's screaming reached a new pitch. She arched her back, her face now an alarming shade of red. Dr. Petrin was recording everything, his skin tone cycling through confused colors. Security Chief Davin looked at Dr. Sylvan for guidance. "This is normal human offspring behavior?" Dr. Sylvan asked, hearing the strain in his own voice. "Unfortunately, yes," David said with a tired smile. "Welcome to parenting a toddler." "But she's defenseless," Olin protested. "She's completely exposed. Any threat could attack while she's in this state." "She's not worried about threats right now," Rachel explained patiently, even as her daughter continued screaming beside her. "She's overwhelmed. Her brain is still developing. She doesn't have the emotional regulation skills to handle disappointment yet, so she's having a meltdown. Your warrior cast member is incapacitating herself over the absence of a specific food item," Dr. Petrin said slowly, trying to understand. "This is a tactical response to resource denial." "She's not a warrior," Rachel said firmly. "She's a 3-year-old child, and this isn't tactical, it's emotional. She's not thinking right now. She's just feeling everything all at once, and it's too much for her to process." Dr. Sylvan stared at the small human on the floor. Lily had now progressed to the phase where she couldn't even form words anymore, just making incoherent wailing sounds while tears and mucus covered her red face. Her hands grabbed at nothing. Her feet kicked the floor. The stuffed toy lay forgotten beside her. 32 years of research. Thousands of hours of footage. Detailed psychological profiles. Complex behavioral models. And none of it, absolutely none of it, had predicted this. Commander Lissa started laughing. It was inappropriate, but she couldn't help it. "You studied human combat for 3 decades, she said to Dr. Sylvan, "and a small child destroyed your entire theoretical framework in under 5 minutes. Dr. Sylvan couldn't even argue. She was right. Everything he thought he understood about humans had just been completely upended by a toddler who wanted the wrong kind of crackers. Lily's screaming finally began to decrease in volume, transitioning to exhausted sobbing. Rachel gently picked her up, and this time Lily didn't resist, just buried her face in her mother's shoulder and cried. Rachel rubbed her back, murmuring soft words that the translator couldn't quite pick up. The cafeteria was completely silent except for Lily's diminishing sobs. Every Varos researcher stood frozen, trying to process what they'd just witnessed. "So," David said into the silence, "does anyone want to talk about what just happened? Because I'm guessing your research files didn't cover this particular scenario." Dr. Sylvan's skin had faded to pale, shocked white. "No," he admitted quietly. "No, they did not." The emergency research meeting had been called within an hour of what was now being referred to as the incident. Dr. Sylvan sat at the head of the conference table, his skin still cycling through uncertain colors. Around him, his entire research team looked equally disturbed. 32 years of work, and they'd somehow missed something fundamental about humanity. Commander Lissa leaned against the wall, her skin showing faint amusement. She'd been proven right about the research being incomplete, and while she wasn't rubbing it in, her presence alone reminded everyone of her earlier skepticism. "Let's review the footage again," Dr. Petrin said, pulling up the cafeteria recordings on the holographic display. The research team watched in silence as Lily's meltdown played out once more. Even knowing what was coming, it was still shocking to witness. "Pause there," Olan said, pointing to the moment where Lily dropped to the floor. "Look at her body language. Complete abandonment of defensive posture, no threat assessment, no scanning for danger. She closes her eyes during a perceived crisis situation." "It's not a crisis to her," Dr. Sylvan said slowly, trying to work through it. "Or rather, it is a crisis, but not the kind we understand. Not a survival crisis. Something else entirely. Emotional crisis, suggested Dr. Mira, one of the younger researchers who'd been relatively quiet until now. The parent, Rachel, said the offspring couldn't regulate emotions yet. What if that's the key? What if we've been analyzing humans through entirely the wrong framework? The conference room fell silent. Dr. Sylvan felt something shifting in his understanding, like standing on ice and hearing it crack beneath him. Continue that thought, he said. Dr. Mira's skin flushed with nervous energy, but she pressed on. All our research focused on adult humans in high-stress situations. Combat disasters, life or death scenarios. We documented how they respond to physical threats, but we never studied how they develop into those capable adults. We skipped the entire maturation process because it wasn't relevant to understanding human warriors, Dr. Petrin protested. We were studying combat capabilities, not child development. But what if you can't separate them? Dr. Mira pulled up her own tablet, showing notes she'd been compiling. I started looking into human developmental psychology after the incident. It's not in our main research database because we never considered it important. But humans don't emerge as fully formed warriors. They go through decades of development, and during that time they're incredibly vulnerable. She pulled up comparison images. Look at other predator species we've studied. Most reach maturity within a few years. They can hunt, fight, and survive independently relatively quickly. But human offspring? They require constant care for years, sometimes more than a decade before they can truly survive independently. That seems like an evolutionary weakness, Olan said, but his tone was thoughtful rather than dismissive. Does it? Commander Lisa spoke up from her position by the wall. Or is it something else? Think about what we witnessed today. That small human completely lost control of herself. She was vulnerable, irrational, and defenseless. And what did the adult humans do? The male positioned himself between the offspring and our security team, Dr. Sylvan said, seeing it now in a new light. Protective stance, but not aggressive. He was ready to defend, but hoping he wouldn't have to. And the female never left the offspring's side, Dr. Petrin added. Even when the offspring was actively rejecting her help, she remained close, ready to intervene the moment the offspring would accept assistance. The older offspring, Noah, moved behind the adult male, Olin noted, following protective instinct even though there was no real threat. Dr. Mira nodded enthusiastically. Exactly. The offspring's vulnerability triggered protective responses from the entire family unit, not just the parents. This is what I've been reading about. Human child rearing isn't just about keeping offspring alive. It's about the entire social structure organizing around protecting and teaching the young during their extended development period. Dr. Sylvan stood up and began pacing, his mind racing. So we've been studying the end result, the finished product, without understanding the process that creates it. It would be like trying to understand Varos technology by only examining finished devices without studying engineering principles. Worse than that, Commander Lysa said. You've been studying human weapons without understanding the forge that makes them. You wanted to know why humans are dangerous. Maybe the answer is that they survive raising their young. A knock at the conference room door interrupted them. David stood there without his family. Sorry to interrupt. Rachel got Lily down for a nap, and Noah's reading in the guest quarters. I was told you might have questions about what happened earlier. Dr. Sylvan gestured for him to enter. Please, we would very much appreciate your perspective. Our research has proven to be inadequate in understanding human developmental stages. David sat down, looking around at the assembled researchers. I'm not a scientist, but I'll help however I can. What do you want to know? Everything, Dr. Petrin said immediately. How do human offspring develop? Why are they so vulnerable for so long? How do you protect them while they're in this state? How do you manage the emotional volatility we witnessed? David laughed, but it was a tired sound. You're asking me to explain parenting. That's a bigger question than you might think, but I'll try. For the next 2 hours, David talked while the researchers recorded everything. He explained pregnancy and infancy, the years when human children couldn't even walk or feed themselves. He described the toddler years when children like Lily could move around but had almost no impulse control or emotional regulation. He talked about the constant vigilance parents maintained, always watching, always ready to prevent disasters. You never stop assessing threats, David said, but they're not the threats you've been studying. It's not enemy soldiers or dangerous predators. It's sharp corners on tables. Electrical outlets, stairs, choking hazards, toxic substances, traffic, other children who play too rough. The threats are everywhere, and they're mundane and they're constant. But the offspring actively resists protective measures, Olin said, reviewing footage of Lily pulling away from Rachel. Why would evolution design it this way? Because they're learning, David explained. They're testing boundaries, developing independence, figuring out how the world works. If we prevented every risk, they'd never learn. So we balance protection with allowing them to experience things, even when those experiences are frustrating or disappointing. Like not having the preferred crackers, Dr. Sylvan said. Exactly like that. Lily's been on this trip for 3 days now. New environments, new people, new foods, new everything. She's been doing great, honestly. But she's 3. Eventually, the stress builds up, and when one more thing goes wrong, even something small, it's too much. The emotional dam breaks, and you just accept this? Dr. Petrin asked, genuinely confused. You tolerate the offspring rendering herself vulnerable and defenseless over a minor resource disagreement? We don't tolerate it, David corrected gently. We understand it. There's a difference. Rachel and I don't enjoy tantrums any more than you enjoyed watching one, but we understand that Lily's brain is still developing. The parts that control emotional regulation, impulse control, rational thinking, those don't fully mature until humans are in their 20s. Lily's 3. She's got decades of development ahead of her. The Veros researchers exchanged looks. Decades. Human offspring required decades of intensive care, protection, and teaching. The sheer resource investment was staggering. How do you survive it? Dr. Mira asked softly. The years of vulnerability, the emotional chaos, the constant vigilance. How do human adults endure that? David smiled, and for the first time, the researchers understood that particular tooth-showing expression. It wasn't aggression. It was love. Because they're ours. Because watching them grow and learn and become themselves is worth every tantrum, every sleepless night, every moment of worry. You saw Lily at her worst today. But you should see her when she's happy. When she's learning something new. When she tells me she loves me before bed. He paused, looking at each researcher. You've studied humans in war, but you've never studied why we fight. It's not because we love violence. It's because we love each other. We protect our families, our communities, our species. You want to understand human warriors? Understand human parents. We're the same people. Commander Lyssa's skin shifted to thoughtful purple. Your entire species is forged in the fire of protecting helpless young for decades at a time. I never thought of it that way, David admitted. But yeah, I guess that's accurate. Dr. Sylvan sat down heavily. His entire theoretical framework hadn't just been incomplete. It had been backwards. They'd been studying human strength without understanding its source. The revised research initiative began immediately. David and Rachel agreed to extend their stay by a week, and what started as a formal diplomatic visit transformed into something else entirely. The Institute of Warfare Studies became somewhat absurdly a center for human family observation. Dr. Mira took the lead on the new research direction, her enthusiasm infectious. She'd set up observation stations throughout the guest quarters with permission and was documenting everything. The other researchers, initially skeptical, soon found themselves drawn into this entirely different view of humanity. Noah had become an unofficial ambassador. The 8-year-old answered questions, demonstrated human-child capabilities, and seemed to genuinely enjoy being the center of attention. Right now, he was in one of the research labs with Olin, attempting to explain the concept of homework. So your society requires young humans to continue learning even after the structured education period ends each day, Olin asked, taking notes. Yeah, and we have to do it at home, which is why it's called homework, Noah explained with the patience of someone who'd answered this question before. Sometimes it's math problems, sometimes reading, sometimes projects. And adult humans enforce this requirement? My parents do. If I don't finish my homework, I lose screen time. Olin had filled half a tablet with notes about human reward and punishment systems in child development. The complexity was staggering. Meanwhile, in another part of the facility, Dr. Petran was learning about bedtime routines. The same sequence of events every night? He asked Rachel, who was preparing Lily for sleep despite it being the middle of the Institute's day cycle. This seems ritualistic. It's about consistency and comfort, Rachel explained, helping Lily into pajamas covered with pictures of cartoon animals. Children thrive on routine. It helps them feel secure. Bath pajamas, brush teeth, story, song, sleep. Same order every time. But you're on a space station. The environmental conditions are completely different from your home. Yet you maintain the ritual anyway. Especially because we're somewhere new. The familiar routine helps her feel safe. Rachel picked up a datapad that contained children's books. Which story tonight, Lily? The one with the dragon, Lily said, already looking sleepy. She'd recovered completely from the afternoon's meltdown, which had fascinated the researchers. The speed of emotional recovery in human children was remarkable. Dr. Petrin watched as Rachel read the story, her voice soft and rhythmic. Lily's eyes drooped. When the story ended, Rachel sang something called a lullaby and Lily fell asleep within minutes. The researcher had recorded the entire sequence, analyzing the acoustic properties of Rachel's voice, the specific rhythm and tone that seemed to trigger sleep responses in the offspring. You do this every night? He asked quietly as they left the darkened room. Every single night. Has been since she was a baby, will be for years more. It's exhausting sometimes, but it works. The resource investment is enormous. Time, energy, emotional labor. For one offspring, Rachel smiled. Humans typically have 1 to 3 children, though some have more. We invest heavily in each one because we can, because we want them to have the best chance at a good life. Quality over quantity, you might say. Across the facility, David was teaching Commander Lissa about play fighting. Noah had challenged him to what humans called roughhousing, and the two were now engaged in what looked to Veros' eyes like actual combat. David pretended to be overwhelmed while Noah climbed on him laughing. They rolled around on the padded floor of the gym, neither actually trying to hurt the other. This serves what purpose? Commander Lissa asked, watching closely.
Training for future combat?
Partially, David said, pausing to catch his breath while Noah did a victory dance. It teaches body awareness, physical limits, how to fall without injury. But mostly it's about bonding. Quality time together, playing, Lissa repeated. Your research files mentioned this concept, but I confess I didn't understand it. Varos young engage in educational activities. This seems to have no clear learning objective. The learning objective is joy, David said simply. Learning that physical activity can be fun. Learning trust, that I won't actually hurt him even when we're being rough. Learning that his dad will make time to play with him even when we're on an important diplomatic mission. Noah ran back over and jumped on David's back. Again, I want to try that flip thing you taught me. Commander Lissa watched as David carefully taught Noah a basic tumbling move, spotting him, making sure he was safe while still allowing the challenge. The attention required was intense. One wrong move and the offspring could be injured, yet the adult human maintained perfect awareness while making it seem effortless. How many years of this? Lissa asked. Until he's too old to want to roughhouse with his dad anymore, David said with a tinge of sadness. Could be a few years, could be more. I'll take whatever time I get. Dr. Sylvan compiled reports from all the observation stations. The sheer variety of human parenting activities was overwhelming. Meal negotiations, where offspring had opinions about every food item. Conflict resolution between siblings, teaching them to share and compromise. Safety monitoring, constantly scanning for potential hazards. Emotional support, comforting fears about everything from dark rooms to bad dreams. Educational guidance, answering endless questions about how everything works. And throughout it all, the humans maintained their other responsibilities. David worked remotely for his engineering job during quiet moments. Rachel continued her research papers when the children were occupied. They were simultaneously full-time parents and full-time professionals, somehow balancing both without dropping either. The endurance requirement is extraordinary, Dr. Sylvan said during that evening's research meeting. Adult humans maintain high-level cognitive function while chronically sleep-deprived, constantly alert, and emotionally engaged with demanding offspring. For years, decades, Dr. Mira corrected. Remember, human offspring don't reach independence until their late teens at minimum. Often their early 20s. That's 2 decades of intensive parenting per offspring. And humans often have multiple offspring, Olin added, sometimes overlapping in age, which means managing different developmental stages simultaneously. Dr. Petrin pulled up his notes from the bedtime observation. I think I'm beginning to understand what we missed. We studied human combat responses, the adrenaline surges, the heightened awareness, the threat assessment. We thought these were specifically evolved for warfare. But they're parenting adaptations, Dr. Mira finished. The same physiological responses that make humans dangerous in combat also make them effective parents. Constant vigilance, rapid threat assessment, immediate response to danger, ability to function under stress. These aren't war adaptations that happen to work for parenting. They're parenting adaptations that happen to work for war. The conference room fell silent as the implications sank in. Commander Lisa broke the quiet. So humanity's deadliness as a species is a side effect of your child-rearing strategy. More than a side effect, Dr. Sylvan said slowly, working through it. A human who has successfully raised offspring to adulthood has spent years in a state of constant alertness. They've made thousands of split-second decisions about safety. They've functioned through exhaustion, stress, and chaos while maintaining emotional stability to support their young. They've learned patience, strategy, adaptation, and perseverance through daily application. By the time a human reaches full adulthood, they've been through a training program more intense than most military boot camps. And they don't even realize it, Olin said wonderingly. They just call it being a parent. Dr. Mira pulled up footage from earlier in the day. Noah playing, Lily sleeping, David and Rachel going through the countless small tasks of caring for children. Look at them. They're not warriors in this moment. They're just a family. But every skill we documented in Human Warriors is on display here. Situational awareness, strategic planning, resource management, threat assessment, team coordination, stress management. It's all here. It's just aimed at keeping children safe and happy instead of fighting enemies. We were so focused on human capacity for violence that we missed the foundation underneath it, Dr. Sylvan said. Humans aren't dangerous despite being social, emotional, family-oriented creatures. They're dangerous because of it. The same traits that make them devoted parents make them formidable opponents. The protective instinct, the unwillingness to give up, the ability to push through impossible circumstances, it all comes from the same source. Commander Lissa's skin shifted to deep, thoughtful blue. You know what this means for our strategic assessments, don't you? Every human we encounter, whether they have offspring of their own or not, has been raised by someone who went through this process. Every human alive is the product of years of intensive investment by adults who developed these capabilities. And many of those humans will become parents themselves, Dr. Petrin added. Continuing the cycle, generation after generation, humanity selects for and reinforces these traits. They're not just trained warriors. They're evolved warriors, and they accomplished it through love rather than aggression. Dr. Sylvan looked at his life's work, 3 decades of research, and realized it wasn't wrong exactly. It was just incomplete. They'd documented human capabilities without understanding their source. They'd seen the weapon without understanding the forge. And the forge, improbably, was a 3-year-old having a tantrum because she wanted the wrong crackers. The presentation to Veros High Command was scheduled for the final day of the human family's extended visit. Dr. Sylvan had spent the last week completely rewriting his research conclusions, and even now, standing outside the main conference hall, he felt nervous. 3 decades of work was about to be radically revised in front of the most important military and scientific leaders in the collective. Commander Lissa placed a supportive hand on his shoulder, her skin showing reassuring green tones. You're presenting truth, Sylvan. That's all anyone can ask. I'm presenting a complete reversal of my previous conclusions, he said. I classified humans as Category 4 apex predators based on combat capability alone. Now I'm arguing that we fundamentally misunderstood the source of that capability. Then you're correcting a mistake. That's science. That's integrity. The conference hall doors opened. The High Council chamber was impressive even by Veros standards, with curved walls displaying star maps and strategic data. High Chancellor Oren sat at the center of the raised platform, her skin showing formal silver tones. Around her, various military commanders and scientific directors took their seats. Admiral Torvin, head of the collective's defense forces, looked particularly stern. Dr. Sylvan walked to the presentation area, Olin following with the updated data files. The holographic display activated, but instead of showing the combat footage that had opened his original presentation, it now showed something different. A human family at dinner, David, Rachel, Noah, and Lily passing food, talking, laughing. Completely ordinary. Esteemed council, Dr. Sylvan began, his voice steady despite his nerves. For 32 years, I have dedicated my life to understanding humanity's combat capabilities. My research has been thorough, detailed, and fundamentally incomplete. I stand before you to present revised conclusions that I believe more accurately reflect the nature of human danger. Admiral Torvin leaned forward. Your original research classified humans as Category 4 apex predators. Are you suggesting they should be reclassified lower? No, Admiral. I'm suggesting they should be reclassified higher, Category 5. But not for the reasons our original framework predicted. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Category 5 was reserved for species that posed existential threats. It had been empty since the Callan Wars 2 centuries ago. High Chancellor Oren raised a hand for silence. Explain, Dr. Sylvan. What have you discovered that warrants this escalation? Dr. Sylvan changed the display to show footage from the past week. What I discovered, Chancellor, is that we were studying the symptom rather than the disease. We documented human combat capabilities without understanding their origin. We observed the weapon without examining the forge. And the forge improbably is the human family unit. He walked them through everything. The extended childhood requiring decades of intensive care, the constant vigilance parents maintained, the emotional labor, the physical demands, the mental load. He showed footage of Noah playing, of Lily's tantrum and recovery, of David and Rachel navigating the countless challenges of parenting while maintaining professional responsibilities. Human children are vulnerable for an extraordinarily long period, Dr. Sylvan explained. This isn't a weakness. It's a feature. During this extended development, human adults maintain a state of constant alertness. They make thousands of threat assessments daily. They function through chronic stress and sleep deprivation. They develop patience, strategic thinking, rapid decision-making, and unwavering commitment to protecting their young. Dr. Petron stepped forward to add his analysis. We've been comparing human combat performance to other species and asking why humans are so effective. The answer is training, but not military training. Parenting training. A human who has raised offspring successfully has spent years developing every skill that makes them dangerous in combat. They just developed those skills through love rather than war. The display showed comparison data, human stress responses versus other species, human endurance versus other species, human tactical adaptability versus other species. In every category, humans exceeded expectations, and in every category the traits correlated with parenting demands. Consider what we witnessed, Dr. Mira said, presenting her developmental research. A 3-year-old human had an emotional breakdown over the absence of a preferred food item. This event, which seemed to invalidate our research, actually revealed its foundation. The child's vulnerability triggered protective responses from her entire family unit. But more importantly, the parents handled the situation with practiced calm. They've dealt with thousands of similar situations. They're trained through repetition to manage chaos while maintaining emotional stability. Commander Lisa stepped up, representing the military perspective. I was skeptical of the original research. I thought Dr. Sylvan was overestimating human threat potential. I was wrong. If anything, he was underestimating it. Every human we encounter has been raised by adults who went through this process. They've been protected, taught, and shaped by people with enhanced vigilance, strategic thinking, and unwavering commitment. And many will become parents themselves, perpetuating and reinforcing these traits across generations. Admiral Torvin looked troubled. You're suggesting that humanity's deadliness is a byproduct of their child-rearing practices? Not a byproduct, Dr. Sylvan corrected. The foundation. Humans didn't evolve for war. They evolved for parenting, which requires many of the same skills. When those skills are applied to conflict, humans become extraordinarily effective. But the source of their effectiveness is protective love, not aggression. This makes them more dangerous, not less. Why? High Chancellor Oren asked. If the source is protective rather than aggressive, wouldn't that make them less threatening? Dr. Sylvan had anticipated this question, because humans will negotiate, compromise, and seek peace in most circumstances. They prefer cooperation to conflict, but if you threaten what they're protecting, their families, their communities, their species, you trigger responses honed by generations of parenting. You're not facing a warrior. You're facing a parent who believes their children are in danger, and human parents, as we've documented extensively this past week, do not give up. They do not surrender. They cannot be reasoned with when protecting their young. They will push through injury, exhaustion, and impossible odds because that's what parenting has trained them to do. The chamber fell silent. On the display, footage played of Rachel comforting Lily after the tantrum, of David teaching Noah safety while roughhousing, of the countless small moments of protection and care that defined human child rearing. "You're saying," Admiral Torvin said slowly, "that the most dangerous thing about humans is that they love their families." "Yes, Admiral. And by extension, they love their species. They bond with each other, protect each other, fight for each other, not out of instinct alone, but out of practiced, refined, generationally reinforced protective behavior. Every human alive is the product of years of investment by adults who developed these capabilities. The entire species is forged in this fire." High Chancellor Oren was quiet for a long moment. Her skin shifted through several colors before settling on thoughtful purple. "What are your recommendations, Dr. Sylvan?" "Category 5 classification, but not Category 5 hostile. Category 5 protective. Humanity should be approached with respect, not fear. They prefer cooperation, but attempting to threaten or harm them is extraordinarily unwise. They're not conquerors. They're guardians. The difference is crucial." Another long silence. Finally, Admiral Torvin spoke. "I've reviewed your complete files, Dr. Sylvan, including your documentation from this past week. I watched the footage of the child's distress in the cafeteria. I watched the parents' responses. I watched how the entire family operated as a unit, and I agree with your assessment. Any species that can remain calm, strategic, and effective while managing that level of chaos for decades at a time deserves respect." High Chancellor Oren nodded slowly. "The Council will review your complete research and make a formal classification decision. But I suspect we'll agree with your recommendation. Humanity will be reclassified as Category 5 protective. Our diplomatic protocols will be updated accordingly." She paused. "Is the human family still here? I'd like to meet them." "They're waiting outside, Chancellor. They've been remarkably patient with our research needs. Bring them in. If we're going to understand humanity, we should start by thanking the family that taught us what we were missing." A few minutes later, David and Rachel entered with Noah and Lily. The little girl was holding her father's hand, looking around with wide, curious eyes. She'd made a remarkable recovery from the previous week's meltdown. She was wearing a shirt with some kind of cartoon character on it and carrying her stuffed toy. High Chancellor Oren descended from the platform, her skin showing welcoming blue. "Thank you for your patience with our research. Dr. Sylvan tells me you've given us insights we never expected." Rachel smiled. "Happy to help, though I'm not sure what insights you got from watching us deal with normal family chaos." "That's exactly the point," Commander Lissa said. "What's normal for you is extraordinary to us. You've given us a completely new understanding of your species." Lily tugged on her father's hand. "Dad, can I show them my drawing?" "May I?" Rachel corrected gently. "And yes, if the Chancellor doesn't mind." "Please," Oren said, genuinely curious. Lily pulled a paper from her mother's bag and held it up. It showed stick figures labeled Lily and alien friends surrounded by stars. The drawing was objectively terrible by artistic standards, but somehow that made it more precious. A child's innocent view of new friends in space. "This is beautiful," Oren said, and meant it. "Thank you for sharing it with me." Lily beamed, then immediately tried to climb up her father's leg, her attention already moving to something else. David picked her up automatically, the movement so practiced it seemed unconscious. Noah was examining the holographic displays with fascination, asking Olin questions faster than the researcher could answer them. Dr. Sylvan watched the scene and realized something profound. This was humanity, not the warriors in his combat footage, not the tactical geniuses in his strategic analyses. This family navigating space station visits while managing children's needs, staying patient through chaos, protecting and teaching and loving despite the challenges. This was the source of everything that made humans remarkable. "Dr. Sylvan," High Chancellor Oren said quietly, drawing him aside. "Your research has been invaluable to the collective, both the original work and these new insights. What will you study next?" Dr. Sylvan looked at the human family, at Lily now explaining something to Admiral Torvin with 3-year-old logic, while the military commander listened with bemused attention, at Noah's endless questions, at David and Rachel managing it all with practiced ease. "I think," he said slowly, I'll study human childhood development more thoroughly. We have decades of combat data, but we've barely scratched the surface of understanding how humans create the adults who become capable of all those remarkable things. The answer is here in these ordinary moments. I just needed a toddler's tantrum to help me see it. Commander Lissa laughed. Decades of research destroyed and rebuilt by a 3-year-old. You have to appreciate the irony. I appreciate the lesson, Dr. Sylvan said. Humanity's strength doesn't come from their weapons or their tactics. It comes from their families, from their willingness to invest everything in the next generation, from the love that drives them to protect what matters. We spent 32 years studying human warriors. We should have been studying human parents all along. On the display behind them, the updated classification glowed softly. Humanity. Category 5, Protective. Approach with respect. High capacity for both cooperation and defense. Strongest when protecting family units or bonded groups. Recommend peaceful engagement and cultural exchange. And in smaller text added by Dr. Sylvan himself, note, human offspring appear chaotic and vulnerable, but serve as training ground for adult capabilities. Do not underestimate species simply because their young seem tactically incompetent. The adults have survived raising them. Lily's laughter echoed through the council chamber as she showed Admiral Torvin how to make her stuffed toy dance. The sound was pure joy, completely at odds with the serious military setting. But somehow Dr. Sylvan thought it was exactly right. This was humanity. Dangerous, yes, but dangerous because they loved so fiercely that they would face anything to protect it. The research was complete. Finally, they understood.